Hello and welcome to the webinar, How Dick's Sporting Goods Leverages Testing to Take Data-Driven Action, hosted by Market Dial. Today we'll be talking about how Dick's Sporting Goods applies data to its in-store decisions and how the company has used testing to optimize customer experience. Before getting started, we have a few simple housekeeping matters for our viewers. At the bottom of your screen, you'll find some application widgets for your use. These widgets are all resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to optimize your desktop space. The slides will advance automatically throughout the presentation. To enlarge the slides, click the Enlarge Slides button in the top right-hand corner of your presentation window. We encourage you to submit questions at any time throughout the presentation using the Q&A widget. We will try to answer your questions during the webcast, but if a fuller answer is needed or if we run out of time, it will be answered later on via email. Please know we do capture all questions and we want to make sure that you receive an answer. Now it's time to get started. My name is Megan Billingsley and I'm excited to moderate this discussion today. We're going to hear from two experts for this webinar. So to introduce them, we have Keegan McGee, Director of Operational Analytics at Dick's Sporting Goods. Keegan is a champion of data-driven action. She has a keen eye towards driving productivity and elevating the customer experience through deep analytics and purposeful testing, a byproduct of her innate curiosity and bent towards relentless improvement. Keegan holds an MBA from the University of Pittsburgh Katz School of Business and a BS in International Relations and Economics from Colgate University. Keegan, welcome.
Thank you, Megan. So as Megan mentioned, I'm the Director of Operational Analytics here at Dick's Sporting Goods. Within that purview, my team services our field and our stores organization, as well as a lot of internal cross-functional partners. We run point on all data and reporting as it relates to stores. So anything that's store facing, we're the ones producing. And we also run point on store analytics and run a bevy of tests that are operational and technological in nature that occur in stores. Also within our responsibility is running our cross-functional testing center of excellence, which is multi-layered. We meet regularly across 3 different levels: our working group, our functional leadership group, and our executive group, to review test results, discuss overarching testing strategies and initiatives, as well as to promote education and best practices. As the leader of the Center of Excellence, our team serves as the experts and the main point of contact for Market Dial, and we are the primary kind of internal users of Market Dial and do a bevy of different tests within the software. So while we are the subject matter experts on Market Dial within our organization, Market Dial interfaces directly with all of our end users and has relationships across our organization.
Fantastic. Thank you, Keegan. Lynn Zhang is Manager of Data Science at Market Dial. Lynn is passionate about working closely with clients and is adept at translating their feedback into features that advance the Market Dial app. Lynn has economics and mathematics degrees from the University of Chicago and a background in economic consulting. An eager learner, she revels in trying new recipes from different cultures, mastering the nuances of gardening, and challenging herself with adventurous hiking and bouldering. Lynn, welcome.
Great, thanks, Megan. Great to be here. So as Megan mentioned, I manage our data science team here at Market Dial. So Market Dial, just at a very high level, is a software that specializes in in-store A/B testing. We just make it really fast and smooth for retailers to both design and analyze tests in their retail locations. So my team, the data science team, we work really closely with our clients. We're actually our client support team. So we're there to train our clients, make sure they have the tools and the support that they need to both design tests and also analyze tests, and also just generally to adopt testing as an organization. We're here to answer the hard questions on methodology, on how to interpret results, and we also roll up our sleeves to deep dive into the data and the methodology as needed. So I actually work really, really closely with Keegan's team as well as the other users at Dick's Sporting Goods. We're just generally there to help support them in all of their testing initiatives, one of which we'll talk about soon. So yeah, really excited to be here and share the work that we've done with the Dick's Sporting Goods team.
Fantastic. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us today, Keegan and Lynn. So, to kick us off, I just want to point out that we'll be learning from a top tier organization today. Being data driven is something that many companies recognize is important, but Dick's Sporting Goods exemplifies what it means to be data driven and uses testing to inform decisions across the organization. So, Keegan, what are some ways your team supports data driven decision making at Dick's Sporting Goods?
Yeah, absolutely. Lots to say on this topic. So at Dick's Sporting Goods, we really do describe ourselves as data driven, and it really is part of our DNA. As part of that, within the analytics group, we truly have a seat at the table in all major business discussions and initiatives. So how do we achieve this? One of the things that we do as an analytics group is we embed ourselves with our cross-functional partners, and we help them on the day-to-day. We help them optimize the business, and we also help them think about forward-looking strategies and work with them on their transformational initiatives. So all of the decisions that we make as an organization are rooted in data. And it's truly how we create our priorities, how we determine roadmaps, and how we run the business on the day-to-day. Everything is informed by data. And we look at all types of data. So we focus on a lot of our kind of core KPIs that you would expect from a retailer. We look at sales, we look at margin, we look at comp. But we also, as an organization, are really big on what we call internally the athlete experience. So our internal nomenclature for customer is actually athlete, and for associate is teammate. So you may hear me say athlete experience or athletes. I'm truly talking about the customer. And so for us, the athlete perspective is absolutely critical and is a core KPI in everything that we do. And that's one of the things that we'll talk about today with the tests that we're focusing in on, is that while, of course, we have our traditional KPIs, it's really that athlete experience that's at the center of everything that we do.
I love that. I'm going to be thinking about how I'm an athlete next time I go into a Dick's Sporting Goods. So putting the customer at the center of everything you do obviously contributes to Dick's Sporting Goods' success, especially given current trends among customers. And as you can see on your screen, 73% of consumers point to experience as an important factor in their purchasing decisions behind price and product quality. 43% of consumers would pay more for greater convenience, and 42% would pay more for a friendly, welcoming experience. So the test we'll discuss today helped Dick's Sporting Goods deliver on those expectations for consumers. Before we dig into that, however, we'll mention that the test that we'll discuss today was only possible because Dick's Sporting Goods understands the value of testing, which many organizations don't. So Lynn, how and why are some retailers failing to test optimally?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So based on what I've seen, I think all retailers are testing in one way or another. They're always making different changes at their stores. But when you don't have a good process and methodology in place for designing, implementing, and analyzing the tests, it can be hard to be confident in the impact of your changes. So what happens if you're not testing in the right way? So we actually see a couple common testing mistakes with retailers that are maybe newer to testing or haven't fully bought into the process of testing. So the first piece is designing a test can be very hard and time consuming to do manually. So there are some issues with test design that we've seen just generally across retailers. So the first one, now I'm moving on to the bullet points on the slide here. So the first one is testing at the wrong group of stores. So what that means, so for example, let's say you're a retailer, you're running a test, and you choose to run your test just at the 5 stores right next to your headquarters because it's operationally easy. That is good in some ways. Like I mentioned, it's easier, perhaps cheaper to run a test like that. But your stores right next to headquarters can look very different from your store 500 miles away. So the results of this test that you're running might not be predictive of an actual rollout if you were to make that change across all of your stores. So what we actually recommend is choosing a good unbiased sample of stores across different geographies, of different sizes, of different types of attributes, just to make sure you have a good representative sample when you're running a test. So the next piece that we've seen some mistakes is using the wrong group of control stores or not using control stores at all. So that's that second bullet point. So sometimes we've seen when running a test, just using last year's sales as a control, or just comparing to your rest of fleet sales, or just his sales at nearby stores as the control. So the issue with using the wrong control is that you can introduce a lot of noise and variability into your analysis, and that can just make it harder to get a good read on the results. So moving on to actually reading the results, it can be really hard to make a right decision from test results without the right tools and the methodology. So in testing, both retail in-store testing or other types of testing, there's this concept of statistical significance or confidence that's really important. What statistical significance tells you essentially is this impact, this sales lift I'm seeing from my test, is that actually the impact of the test itself, or is it just random noise in the data? So the higher the confidence, we typically above 90% confidence, the higher the confidence, the more confident you can be that the results of your test can be trusted, that your initiative is actually making an impact. So it's really important to take this, to always look at lift and confidence together when you're making a decision. So sometimes we've seen retailers just make a decision purely based off of that lift number without considering that uncertainty aspect, that confidence value. But it's really important to take both into account before you make a rollout decision. And then finally, just logistically, it can be really hard to manually keep track of all of the different tests running across the organization. So what that can sometimes lead to is just running multiple tests at the same store at the same time. You might have a pricing initiative going on, a merchandising initiative. And what happens there is that it can be really hard to isolate the impact of any one initiative so that you don't have as clear of a sense of what's actually helping your business, what's actually driving any increase in sales. So we always recommend making sure to keep a clean set of stores that you're testing in. You're running just one test at any given store at a time. So in the end, it's just generally really important to follow some testing best practices when it comes to designing and analyzing your tests. This just helps ensure that you draw the right conclusions from the tests that you're running. So based on what I've seen, retailers have no shortage of ideas when it comes to testing. It's that second piece of investing in rigorous testing that helps you learn which ideas work and how you should invest in them.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lynn. We are getting some great questions from our audience, so thank you. Keep them coming. We're going to do a Q&A session with Lynn and Keegan at the end. I do want to ask next, what kinds of ideas was Dick's Sporting Goods investigating with this test? Keegan, what goals did Dick's Sporting Goods have with the in-store engagement testing initiative?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do want to start, we are constantly running tests as an organization. And in this particular test, what we really were focusing in on is how can we drive a superior athlete experience? As I mentioned, we're a very data-driven organization. And as part of that, we are always mining our data, looking for opportunities to be even better than we are today. And one of our, looking at some of our data, we identified that there were some different days of the week and different kind of peak time periods where we felt like we could do an even better job servicing our athletes. And so with our test, the ultimate goal was to up the ante, to make sure that all athletes felt welcomed, engaged, listened to, and that we were servicing their needs and providing truly a superior experience. And as we are a retailer, we of course also want to do so in a profitable manner. And so we designed this test. We'll go into, I'm sure I'll talk a little bit more about all the details of that. But we designed this test with essentially 4 different groups, including a control group, with different levels of staffing and slightly different kind of labor models within these different groups.
Excellent, thank you. And how did you develop the in-store engagement test? What did that process look like?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we are very cross-functional in nature and look at a lot of data. So the process was fairly complex because we wanted to make sure that we had every interested party part of the conversation and weighing in so that we could really create a great test design that we felt when we got the results that we would feel good about what we went and tested. So we partnered with a bunch of different groups internally. So that would include our stores organization, our central operations group at the headquarters, strategy and analytics, athlete insights, as well as our finance group and our loss prevention group. So we really had a big group of folks come together to ideate on what would be the best use of labor, what would be worth testing, and what data do we have to suggest that these different models were the ones that we should go after. And so once we were able to kind of determine what the different cells or test treatments would be, we needed to select the stores that would serve as the base of our test. We weren't going to go test in all 850 stores, so we needed to filter down that initial criteria set and then use that initial pool to then determine statistically what was the best, most representative groupings, which is what Lynn was speaking to earlier in terms of setting up the right testing groups. And so for us, we wanted to have a base level of staffing to ensure that the stores that were selected would be able to execute the test, and importantly, that if we were to roll out this test, that they would be part of that rollout. So that's a very important thing for us at DICK'S, is we don't want to test a bunch of test stores that all have a certain level of staffing and then compare them to control stores that don't have that same level. So that's a really critical piece of that setting up of the test. So we went through kind of some complex analyses. We figured out the models, we figured out days of week, time of day. And then we went to Market Dial, and they helped us set up the test in the system. So their system is really robust and really easy to use, helping us to create these different groupings of stores. One of the cool things that, as we got familiar with Market Dial and got really deep into it, one of the things that I've been able to do was actually help educate and justify the testing team's recommendations for tests with my cross-functional business partners in a really easy way. So when I say that, part of test design, sure, is, what stores are in what group, what's in the control group, what are you testing? I mean, those are absolutely critical. But you also have to make other decisions. You have to make other decisions around how long are you going to test? You have to make decisions on, are we even going to reach significance by testing, and how long would we need to reach that significance? What level of significance are we comfortable with? How big of a group of stores do we need for how long to reach said significance? And then also, you have to have some assumptions over what kind of lift you would actually expect to see. So all of this is highly, highly complex. But the software tool that Market Dial has, Market Dial's platform, makes it really easy. It's one thing for people to try to understand data science and all of the coding in the back end, but when it can be distilled into a red, yellow, green with like a slider functionality that you can actually see, like if I want to be at 90%, I need this many stores for this long, versus if I'm good with 80%, I can drop it to this. It's really truly game changing, and has really changed the conversations that I'm able to have with our business partners.
Yeah, I mean, Keegan honestly covered a lot of what I was going to talk about here. But so Market Dial typically comes in after this ideation process that Keegan described. So it was actually really cool hearing about all the planning and all the thought that went into actually defining what this test would look like and what all the cells were. But Keegan also hit on just like those really, really important pieces of test design that are just so like critical to get right before you even start a test, to make sure that you have a good test from which you can trust the results. So I'll just cover this kind of briefly, but there's essentially 3 important decisions that you have to make whenever you're going about designing a test. The first is these like sliders that Keegan was talking about. The first is the sample size. How many stores should I test at? How many weeks should I test for in order to know that I will get a significant read on my test? So in the case of this test, we work closely with Keegan's team to understand some of those assumptions they talk about, like what % lift do we need? What particular metrics are we interested in impacting, to determine just the minimum sample size they would need in order to reach a good level of confidence. So after determining like how large the test should be, that's when we moved into actually helping select the treatment stores. And we were really happy that they came to us for the treatment store selection as well, so that we can really ensure that there's a good unbiased sample of stores. So for each of these 3 different cells for this test, we help select just like a good mix of stores in each of the groups to ensure what we call representativeness for the treatment sample. And then afterwards, we matched each of those treatment stores in the different cells to good control stores based on similarity in historical sales patterns. And then from there, once we had the test design, the DSG team took that test design and went to implement in stores. And that's actually when the really exciting stuff happens. The test is implemented, the data comes trickling in, and then we can start analyzing and just seeing are these different initiatives actually driving significant lift at the stores?
It really does sound exciting. I love that you used that word. Keegan, when it comes to analyzing the test, what results did you find out?
Yeah, so we're really excited because we actually hit statistical significance when we expected to. And anyone who's ever done store testing on this call, I'm sure there's quite a few folks, will know that it is not easy always to get statistical significance when you are testing in stores. So it was very exciting that we were able to find that in 2 of our 3 treatment cells, that we were driving the athlete experience in a statistically significant way. And that was super exciting. One of those cells, though, was profitable. The other one was not. So we were able to actually find kind of a winner test treatment, which was extremely exciting for us as an organization. And truly a testament to both to a few things. You know, it comes down to the test design, comes down to the execution of the test. So our stores that are actually performing and actually, you know, staffing appropriately and executing what we designed. And also just in general, all these things that Lynn was talking about around the test length and the number of stores. So it was really exciting. There's been a lot of times where we've had tests where we didn't hit statistical significance. So hitting it when we expected to was a huge boon for us. I want to also add that one of the great things about the platform is that we're able to feed in data, our own custom data into the platform, and then it goes through all of the algorithms in the background to spit out how we're doing on different metrics. One of the interesting things with this particular test was we had metrics that were outside the platform, meaning we hadn't set up a feed for it yet. And one of the great things was we really did want to make sure that these other kind of KPIs, that we were looking at them and understanding them, get a full picture of the performance. And so we actually worked with Lynn and her team of data scientists who were able to help us by doing some of the custom work in the back end. And it's really this kind of flexibility and partnership and like knowing that they're there to help us be successful that makes them such a great partner.
Excellent. And could you provide an example of that data?
Yeah, more than happy to. So we've talked a lot about athlete experience, and one of our main ways of capturing kind of the voice of athlete is through our athlete satisfaction program. And we use Medallia for, in general, our athlete satisfaction program in our stores. And so we were able to set up feeds of the Medallia data to feed directly to MarketDial, and MarketDial was able to take this data, work with us and our tech teams to transform it into the right metric set. And then now we actually have this feeding directly into our test so that it's very easy for us to go into the system and see, are we really driving the needle in some of our core athlete kind of KPIs. But, you know, beyond the data feeds themselves, one of the things that we do at Dick's Sporting Goods is that we really try to take a holistic approach to our measurement so that we truly understand the impact even beyond kind of the quantitative. So the quantitative is amazing and great, but we also want to know kind of the why. And so for this particular test, what we did is we actually held calls with our stores. We worked with our athlete insights team who helped do kind of shop alongs and some kind of secret shopping to really validate some of what we believe to be going on. We also personally went into stores during times and did our own kind of observation as well. And it's really this kind of cross-functional view of the test where we bring in various departments, you know, not only in the ideation, but also in kind of this measurement phase that helped us really understand if we are being successful. And I do have to say, just I think really that cross-functional layer and bringing all the voices to the table is just so critical across all stages. You know, what you're testing, the actual execution of it, and then ultimately how you're analyzing the success.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think all of that just points to Dick's Sporting Goods being, you know, just a leader in some of these like analytics and making decisions from not just the data, but also this like really important qualities that Keegan mentioned. But also just to touch on customer satisfaction again. So as we mentioned for this test, we were actually seeing a very significant positive lift in customer or athlete satisfaction scores. But I'm learning, but that's not always the case. Customer satisfaction scores tend to be really noisy across retailers. You just don't have as much data because not as many people are filling out those surveys. And even the data you get, it tends to vary a lot week over week. So it can really be hard to get a high confidence in customer satisfaction lift, just because it's hard to like identify any significant impact out of all of that noise. But in the case of this test, the impact to the positive lift in customer satisfaction was so high that we were in fact able to get a significant read, which was just really cool for us to see. And another thing I'll point out, for tests like this, it's really easy to just focus on, you know, the conversion metric, the high level revenue lift, but the DSG team was just like, it's really cool that they brought in this additional layer of looking at how the athlete experience was impacted by the test. And I think that just, you know, really speaks to their goals as an organization.
I think that's remarkable. Keegan, what plans does Dick's Sporting Goods have to follow up on the test?
Yeah. So we're looking to capitalize on the learnings with a phase 2. So we actually have a phase 2 kind of in flight and are still looking at results and trying to figure out if there's another way of driving the athlete experience at an even more profitable rate, and really understanding which stores did the best. And so we could look at different rollout strategies in place. So that's really the kind of direct next steps of this particular test. But I will say that, we have tons of tests going on at all times. We have a lot of different labor tests out there where, again, we're really trying to drive that athlete experience. We have a lot of fun store technology tests, and we have a lot of different merchandising initiative tests that are out there. And that's not even to speak to some of our e-commerce and marketing initiatives. So we're always testing. We're always learning. The more we test, really, the more we learn, and the better our next tests are, because we learn and implement learnings from those tests. And one of the great things that I think we've set up as an organization is this, this cross-functional testing COE, because it really does bring us all together to share learnings that may seem siloed at some cases, and bring it all together so we make sure that we're talking and learning and helping each other with best practices. The other critical piece here is that as part of that COE, we are directly with Market Dial, and we are continually optimizing the software with new data feeds and working with them directly on their product roadmap and their different feature set. And it's been really great to see them intake our feedback and actually make things go live, which is really exciting. And I it's just another kind of tip to the hat to the Market Dial platform, though, because we're able to bring our COE along and have them be empowered and to run their own tests and to do their own analyses. Like, they don't have to have coding experience to have these really robust, statistically relevant tests, which is huge for our organization, and really democratizing the ability to test and test faster and learn more.
Yeah, we really love working with our clients, and particularly Dick's Sporting Goods, just because we learn so much about how people actually test and how people use our tool, and that's just huge feedback for us, because we're constantly just improving the way our software works, building new features for our clients. So yeah, it's just always great hearing this from our clients. And a really great, cool thing about Dick's Sporting Goods is just, tests don't just come from a couple of people, they come from across the organization, all these different teams and users that we work with. It kind of feels that every major decision that the business makes needs to be validated by, data or some sort of test result. And that's really the key part of having a strong testing culture, is that testing is kind of woven into, the fabric of your business. And just all these like go, no-go decisions are kind of based on the results from all of your testing. So just generally, it's been very unique observing this company with a very mature testing culture and seeing all the different testing ideas that have come out of it.
And I do really think the ease of use of the MarketDial platform is a huge part of that. If you make it easier for people to conduct analytics and make it easier for them to have really robust results, they're going to believe in it more, and they're going to feel like they're empowered to have these different ideas and to really go make it happen.
And I would imagine that having a single solution for testing supports testing effectiveness.
Oh yeah, definitely. I do think there's a lot of benefit there. So having a centralized platform has a couple of things that it offers. So Dick's Sporting Goods, runs so many tests across so many different teams that it would be really hard to keep track of them all and keep track of all the results and which sites are in tests without some sort of centralized platform. So just having all the tests kind of flowing through one source makes it easy to share learnings across teams and just kind of keep track of everything that's going on within the org. Having like one central solution for testing also offers consistent methodology, which is really important. Like a test that the pricing team is running versus a test that the operations team is running, those are all flowing through using the same methodology, and that they're thinking about ROI and lift the same way, which is just so important for like kind of making consistent decisions across the business. And then finally, having a tool that does testing for you just makes it much faster and easier to build tests and analyze tests. And that can really democratize testing across the organization. Like the barrier to starting testing is much lower. And that just generally helps increase the volume of the testing and the value that you're getting from testing.
Got it. Thank you. So we are coming up on time today, and that's a great point to end on. But I wanted to know if either of you had any closing thoughts before we move to our Q&A. Keegan?
Yeah, I love that phrase that Lynn just used around democratizing testing. And I think that's really key. The more we test, the more we fail fast, the more we learn, and the more learnings we have to inform future testing. And so I think one of the great things about this platform is that it really does allow us to democratize the ability to set up these robust tests. And it's something that I'm really excited about.
Yeah, and just to kind of echo Keegan, like I think in-store testing is a really important tool for retailers to invest in. And by investing in testing, that doesn't mean just going off and running a bunch of tests. It means being thoughtful about your test design, being thoughtful about the decisions that you're making from testing. And something else that Keegan brought up that I think is interesting is this idea of failing fast. Today, we showcased an example that was actually really great. Like we hope to see, significant positive impact. We did see significant positive impact, and that's just a really great story and really great for the business. But part of the value of testing also comes from, tests that you might have expected to work, but they actually hurt your business. And that's just like such a key value of testing, being able to identify these things that don't work early on, not rolling them out, and then just getting value that way, and then moving on to the newer initiatives and then testing out new things. So I think just generally as a business, a big part of testing is also having this culture of not even accepting failure, but kind of celebrating failure from testing, and then just kind of encouraging people to test, being okay if the tests don't work, and then moving on from there.
Excellent. Thank you, Keegan and Lynn, for a really insightful presentation. So we are going to shift into our Q&A session as we're nearing the end of our time. We have a few more minutes to get through, and we've received a ton of great questions, so we'll get through as many as we can before we hit our time. So our first one here says, how has Dick's Sporting Goods experience with MarketDial compared to other testing software if been used historically?
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak to that. So as I somewhat alluded to, we didn't have all of our data feeds completely set up when we initially were running this phase 1 of this test. And that was because we actually had switched over from another testing vendor. And so it has been really great partnering with Market Dial since that switch. I think one of the things that we have found with Market Dial is that they're really invested in our success. They want to be a key partner, and they really want to be on the ground, making sure that everything that we're trying to do can be done in their platform. And I think having that deep partnership and having a partner who's truly invested in your success in that way has made a huge difference for our testing program overall. I think one of just a key testament of how they are listening and want us to succeed, and they want our feedback, is even in the way that they have prioritized certain feature sets over others within their roadmap. They solicit our feedback amongst other clients, and their roadmap is truly client driven, which I think is truly a testament to them listening to the client's needs and making it easy for us to do whatever we want in that platform. While it's obviously the goal that things can be self-service, Market Dial doesn't want just to give us the tools and forget about us. They want to talk to us. Anytime that we reach out to them, they're happy to jump on the phone with us, talk through ideas. I've had Market Dial, just kind of consult what should the test design look like. I've had things as much as I needed them to run a custom analysis because all of the metrics that we were interested in were completely outside the system. And it was kind of a one-off type deal. And so we've been able to use kind of the data science team from really the full spectrum of use. And that's something that, in a really timely fashion too. So that's one of the great things. I mean, there's just so many great things to say, but for me, it truly is around finding that great partner. It's about being listened to, and then the level of, I guess we're not athlete service, but customer service that Market Dial provides is truly exceptional, and something that makes me really buoyed about our partnership going forward.
Teammate service.
There you go.
Lynn's caught on.
Perfect. Our next question, at Dick's Sporting Goods for this sort of test, which team is accountable to making the final decision on what will be tested? Stores, corporate?
Yeah, so we intake a lot of test ideas from stores specifically. That's where a bunch of our different tests ideas will originate. But because our fleet is so diverse, we actually have to find tests that we think will have the biggest bang for the buck. Right. So there might be a specific test that would be really great for 1 or 2 stores to go test. We don't control that. We say, go for it. Go try your test. But when it comes to kind of the bigger, larger initiatives that require a large kind of financial investment, such as a large scale labor test, that's something that comes back to our headquarters, which we call our customer support center, athlete support center. And so we actually make those decisions as a centralized group in partnership, cross-functional partnership with finance and leadership to make sure that we're being responsible with our investments and holding ourselves accountable to the tests that we run, and not just spending money and then not actually analyzing the results and getting the learnings.
Excellent. Thank you. Our next question asks, do you have different metrics for measuring parents of athletes versus athletes shopping for themselves? And how do you guide your teams based on those differences?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. So I think we have a really robust loyalty program. It's called the Scorecard program. I'm sure many out there are members themselves. And so we have a lot of really robust, great data around our athletes. And I think that from a data feed perspective, we do a lot of analyzing internally around athlete health, return, not return, who's shopping for who, a lot of that kind of analysis. And really a big focus for us is to how can we make it easier to do that in the Market Dial platform. So that's something that we're actually actively working with Market Dial on how to do. We're really excited just with, the quality of data, the acceleration of that in recent years, it's only getting better and better. So the more that we can find easy ways to get that into systems such as Market Dial, it'll only be better for us in terms of our analyzing our test success and understanding really the athlete segments that are shopping us most and where the biggest opportunity areas are.
Yeah, we've been working with the Dick's Sporting Goods team on, creating metrics to slice sales by different segments of attributes, just so they can get those deeper learnings. We know this is a key priority for them going forward.
Excellent, thank you. Our next question asks, could looping in the store team cause a bias in the test?
Interesting question. So I definitely think that there is a fine line between how much you're engaging with the stores that are part of test treatments and in terms of getting their feedback throughout the process and actually changing what they do as part of that treatment. So we actually do kind of a normalization phase when we do specific testing, like this particular one. The model that we implemented actually did require some training at the store level. So we actually take like a 3-week kind of implementation phase where we actually don't include those results within our test results. So what we do is we'll solicit feedback early, figure out if there's any operational challenges. Sometimes there's things that we need to do better from a workforce management system perspective. What can we do to make it as seamless for the stores to be able to go execute on the operational change? And so that's really where we get most of that feedback at the beginning. And then we make sure that that change is live for all tests. And then we start kind of our measurement period when that's been completed. We did solicit feedback kind of at our midpoint results to see how they felt about the test. What are they hearing? What are they seeing? We really try to make that, not really for them to dictate changes or, make any changes mid-flight, but to get their feedback. Because ultimately, as I mentioned, of course, we talked a lot about the athlete experience, but as a company, we're very people-centric. So it's not just the athletes, it's also the teammates. We want the teammates to enjoy and and feel supported, that they have the right resourcing to go make a great athlete experience. So we do feel that their feedback is critical as part of our metrics of success.
Excellent, thank you. Next question, is testing done on in-store items and brands, or is this testing process just focused on store process operations? That's from a supplier point of view.
Yeah, that's great. No, great question. So yes, the answer is yes, we do all sorts of testing. Today we focus specifically on operational testing, as that's my team specifically conducted this test, and that's the one that I feel best able to speak to. But we do have tons of other teams out here that are doing testing, and we are doing various types of testing around products and brands in partnership with brands.
Excellent, thank you. How does your team evaluate what test should be done when an idea is presented?
That's a great question. As Lynn said, there are many, many, many ideas. And so a critical piece of all of those ideas is really making sure, one, that it lines up with our strategic vision as an organization. So we want to make sure that the tests that we're going after marry up to our kind of key pillars of focus. And that it's really making sure it's delivering on acute needs. I would say, a prerequisite for any test that we're going to go after, where's the data? What data suggests this would be a good idea? We're very, as I mentioned, we're very data driven. So making sure that we have a good story to tell around why we want to go test. And so I think, at the end of the day, you can only do so many tests. We only have so many stores, and as Lynn mentioned, having too many, you can't, having all these overlapping tests makes it very, very complex to try to get clean reads on what's actually driving results. So we do have to be careful about what we go after. So it's a long way of saying that it goes through kind of a filtering process, and then we bubble it up to our different leadership teams and cross-functionally decide that these are the tests that are best to go after.
Fantastic. Our next question asks, were there any other engagement data inputs beyond Medallia?
Yeah, so we have an entire athlete insights team within our organization. And so Medallia is definitely a really robust, wonderful quant tool that's always on and always capturing feedback, which is great for our organization and very helpful from a quantitative perspective. But we also worked with our Athlete Insights team, who was part of the ideation for this test and actually was part of providing the data to say we should go do some type of test like this. And they actually helped conduct mystery shops, some different kind of shop-alongs that they did. And so they actually went out and got a qualitative view of the athlete experience in a lot of our different test stores to really understand what it was like from a qual perspective.
Excellent. Other than staffing, have you run tests or are there plans to test in-store layouts, signage, and product placement?
I'd say everything is on the table. There are constantly new ideas and new thoughts, and I would just say everything's on the table. So as far as plans, I think one of the exciting things is that through our Center of Excellence, we have some great touch points with our executive leadership team. And that's a really great touch point to really talk about what are the major initiatives that we want to make sure that we're testing and measuring. And we have one of those upcoming to help us set up a great 23 landscape. So we're very excited about that.
Beautiful. Do you do testing for some of Dick's lower volume store counts, such as public lands? And if so, how do you account for controls?
Love that someone's calling out public lands. For those who aren't familiar, public lands is a very new concept that we have launched. I think we're up to 6 stores now. We're growing rapidly in the space, and public lands is really our outdoor concept. That's really it really has a great ethos to it. It's about making the outdoors accessible for everyone, and
yeah,
so
maybe I can. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I can speak to a little from a testing perspective. Yeah, some of these stores, so the public land stores are newer. I think some of them are less than a year old. So they are still a bit early for testing. Like when you want to design a test, you want to make sure that your test stores and control stores both have at least a year's worth of data so that you can select the controls. You want to make sure you have that 52 weeks so you can match based on all of the seasonality in the past year. So public land stores are generally still a bit newer for testing, but we're really excited for testing opportunities going forward.
Yeah, and this is something that we're partnering with Lynn and team on. You know, with when you have like so little store count, how do we best test? Like how can we leverage our Dick's Sporting Goods chain to be a control in some cases? Like what are the creative ways we can go about doing that? And I would just say, you know, in general, I'd say anytime we launch a new concept like public lands, everything's a test, especially the first year that it's open.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We're going to take one more question before we close, and that is, what is an example of a decision from one of your tests that drove the most value or surprised leaders the most?
Well, that's a heavy question. I don't know how I picked just one. That is a great question. I'm thinking on that. I don't even know how to pick one of how I would pick. I'll pick an operational one because that's kind of my area of focus within the org. So one of the things that I think has been really, really telling within the organization is what are some of the things that we can do to simplify the experience of our teammates? So this one is not it doesn't sound exciting to me. I get all jazzed up about it and I get quite excited about it, especially when you think about the cost savings and that we realized. But we had a process, our stores fulfill a lot of our online orders. And so we have a process for picking and packing. And one of the things that we tested this past year was simplifying that process just by one step. And we took out one step and we realized significant cost savings, not just in the supplies for that one step, but in the labor process of actually conducting that step. And so one of the things that I think really kind of surprised leadership was, you know, we were able to take this out. We saw that it didn't have a negative impact on our athlete experience. We saw that it drove cost savings from a supplies and from a labor standpoint. And it was one of those that seemed, to use the phrase, it wasn't sexy. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't that one that you herald. And yet we got such great results. And we had such a wonderful cross-functional group working on it that I think it's some of those that, you take those like small things that maybe don't seem super exciting, but when you actually do them, you end up creating a great athlete experience. Our teammates were happier. They enjoyed the experience better. And it was a total process improvement that really resulted in some really great savings.
Excellent. That last answer will have to wrap things up as we are all out of time today. But before we sign off, I just wanted to thank you again, Keegan and Lynn, for taking the time to share your expertise and insights with us today. For our viewers, we know that we got a lot of great questions we didn't get a chance to get to, so the Market Dial team will deliver an answer to you via email. Today's webinar will also be available on demand if you want to review anything that we talked about. Thanks again for watching.
Thank you, Megan. Thanks everyone for joining.